It's incredibly hard to talk about this for many reasons, and even harder to find the words to explain such a horrible crime. It's with all of my heart that I convey my sincerest apology to everyone for taking Maddox from her family and everyone who loved her. I'm also utterly sorry for denying Maddox her chance at life. I can't expect your forgiveness, but I tell you now that the sorrow I feel for what I've done is complete and comes from the deepest depths of my being. This sorrow I feel has nothing to do with being in jail, but for the pain, for the loss of Maddox. I miss her so bad. Max is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'd say that to her all the time, and to anyone else who'd listen. It was amazing to have her everywhere I went, including all the times I brought her to work with me. When our baby was diagnosed with cancer, we were in shock, but hopeful that the doctors in New York City would cure her, as indeed they did. Even after enduring countless overnight trips to the hospital and fruitless attempts at soothing a baby who couldn't possibly understand why she couldn't eat for hours before invasive treatment procedures, the threat of her cancer returning was very real. Our work schedules were arranged so that one of us was always with the baby, but there was very little time for the three of us together, nor enough money for a sitter or much of anything else. Still, we treated her and fed her better than we did ourselves, and loved her far more than anything else we've ever known. In no way can I justify my actions, and there is no one to blame but myself. There is no good explanation for such a horrendous crime, and regret is too simple a term to describe what I feel. What I can say is I've never felt such strong emotions towards anything in my life than my ever-growing and unconditional love for Maddox, and now I'm completely distraught by overwhelming grief and anguish for what I've done. I was never jealous of my daughter. Both our families know I loved Maddox. If anything, I only wanted more for her. Max was always at the top of my list, and is constantly, to this day, the focal point of my thoughts and actions since she first came into my life. I'll never overcome this feeling of loss, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to figure out how I got to such a dark, irrational state. She was my life's purpose, and making her happy was my job. Such strong feelings of love, however, brought equally strong feelings of fear and uncertainty when it came to my responsibility for her happiness. Although I blame no one else for my acts, as the pressures to give her the perfect life built up, I also struggled against relentless waves of negative emotions every day, bearing witness to the pain and sadness in many of my wife and daughter's interactions. Yet no reason and no psychological diagnosis seemed plausible to me to have made me commit this act against my very nature, taking the one thing I loved most. This Easter, my father, weeping, asked me what I was thinking. In despair, I gave him the only answer I could. I don't know. Although these pressures led me to this unthinkable act, I cannot now make sense of what I did. There's no valid reason for why our daughter Maddox had to die. Not a second goes by when I don't wish I could take back what I did, and that Maddox would still be alive. I pray all the time that she's in a better place and that God and my mother are watching over her. To Morgan and all of those who loved her, I hope that from my plea and acceptance of responsibility, you can find at least some measure of closure from the pain I inflicted. This was, and is, without question, the worst act I will ever commit. I recognize that no one but myself can be blamed for this atrocity, and I will always be traumatized knowing I'm responsible for such incomprehensible actions. Although I accept this punishment, nothing can be worse. Nothing can be worse than my own despair at the loss of Maddox, and I regret that I'm not alone in that feeling. I love my daughter with all my heart. The only thing that can match my love and loss of her now is the dreadful pain and remorse I feel for committing such a terribly terrible crime. I'm sorry. I know I can never be sorry enough.